How do you combine the messiness of divorce and failing marriages with stars, songs, broad comedy and high decibel drama? It is a tough tightrope act. The question is, does Jugjugg Jeeyo manage to do it? This video is brought to you by MUBI, a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. Get 3 months free at mubi.com/filmcompanion90. Jugjugg Jeeyo is the story of two couples. Bhim and Geeta have been married for 35 years. Their son Kuku and his wife Naina have been married for 5. Kuku and Naina met in the 5th grade, after which he pursued her relentlessly. As a little kid, he screams at another boy who's speaking to Naina because he's so possessive of her, which makes him seem oddly like a junior Kabir Singh. When they grow older, Kuku proposes to her 5 times, eventually befriends her brother and finds a way to her heart. The film positions this as cute rather than creepy. But Kuku's grand passion deflates as Naina becomes more professionally successful. After marriage, the couple moves to Toronto where she has a high-flying job and he, poor guy, is a club bouncer. Which reminded me of Karan Johar's Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna, which also presented a similar situation with a marriage slowly coming apart because the wife's career soared as the husband became a bitter failure. So, Kuku and Naina decide to get a divorce. But first, they must return home to Patiala for Kuku's sister Ginny's wedding. There, Kuku finds out that he and Naina are the only ones with separation on their minds. His father is in the throes of a serious flirtation and he's hoping to dump his mother as soon as the wedding is done.
इसलिए मैंने फैसला कर लिया है कि मैं तेरी मम्मी को डिवोर्स कर रहा हूँ.
The story is by Anurag Singh, who earlier directed Kesari and the Punjabi films Jatt and Juliet 1 and 2 and Punjab 1984. It presents sparkling possibilities. In an interview with me, Varun Dhawan described Raj Mehta as today's commercial director, which I interpret to mean that Raj is a storyteller who can take thorny subjects but package them into a family entertainer. Raj's first film, Good News, was a comedy about the difficulty of being unable to conceive and the complications of IVF. Jugjugg Jeeyo includes crass jokes about the sexual urges of a senior citizen, but it also has emotionally resonant conversations about how marriage can become a habit rather than a partnership. The film drunkenly swerves between these tonalities and almost crashes. But with the aid of 4 screenplay writers, 6 music composers and a stellar cast, Raj somehow manages to make this contradictory narrative land. I have to warn you though, that Jugjugg Jeeyo presents a cosmetically enhanced, airbrushed version of divorce. Do not go looking here for the raw messiness of Marriage Story or Kramer vs. Kramer or even some of the surprises that Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna sprung. 16 years ago, Karan was brave enough to have his A-list stars Shah Rukh Khan and Rani Mukherjee play characters who check into a hotel to have sex. In contrast, Raj makes sure to tell us that Bhim's extramarital dalliance is sexually chaste. Dalliance definition here. And any desire that Geeta might have is never addressed. In fact, through the first half, we barely have any sense of who this woman is, apart from being this smiling, bejeweled Punjabi auntie. Anurag and Raj are both Punjabi, but the film isn't aiming for authenticity. Instead, Jugjugg Jeeyo leans heavily into the standard Bollywood Punjabi tropes, including the robust dancing, kulchas, parathas and makhan. Bhim is loud. He cracks PJs. There's one about an alcoholic pigeon that made me laugh out loud. He also drinks too much. So do Kuku and his brother-in-law Gurpreet, who is dressed in designer labels from head to toe. The background music brims with dhols, the women are spectacularly dressed, the styling is by Eka Lakhani. All of them are feisty but within carefully prescribed limits. So Ginny does shots with her friends at her bachelor party but agrees to an arranged marriage because she wants to settle down. Naina's flourishing career is mentioned often, but honestly until the end, I couldn't figure out what her job actually was because it's so sketchily dealt with. And Geeta remains the long-suffering wife who compromises constantly to make the marriage work. Geeta's unstinting nurturing of her selfish lying husband automatically gives her the moral upper hand over Meera, the woman Bhim is interested in. Meera is a working woman who tells Bhim frankly that she likes living alone so much that she's never even brought home a dog. Meera might be strong and more fulfilled in her life, but it's very clear whose side this film is on. The writing by Anurag, Sumit Bhateja, Rishabh Sharma and Neeraj Udvani stays largely broad and generic. Even the leads Coco and Naina aren't written with enough specificity to become flesh and blood individuals. The plot stays resolutely upbeat, but in the midst of the cacophony, definition right here, Raj stages a few key scenes which give the narrative emotional depth, like one between Naina and Geeta. The two women are sitting on a bench. This, incidentally, is a long-running Karan Johar tradition. You recall the brothers reuniting in Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, or that opening sequence with Dev and Maya in Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna. In this wonderfully written scene, Geeta bares her heart to her daughter-in-law, telling her about her marriage and how in the first year itself she wondered if her husband was the right man for her. Her recognition of the emptiness in her life's most enduring relationship is heartbreaking. Despite the fault lines, Jugjugg Jeeyo remains watchable because of moments like this, and because the actors are uniformly good. Anil Kapoor makes Bheem both vulnerable and, despite his shenanigans, really likable. Watch him in a scene in which he first tells his son that he wants a divorce. His eyes suddenly go silent as though he himself can't believe what he's saying. With every film, Anil seems to be delivering a masterclass on how an actor can become vintage wine and age with panache. Raj can't resist playing up Varun Dhawan's stardom. So Cuckoo proposes to Naina by writing, "Will you marry me?" on his washboard abs, and he also gets to strut his stuff in nightclub numbers. But we also see Cuckoo's insecurities, his selfishness. Varun toggles convincingly between these clashing aspects. Apart from that one key scene, Naina and Geeta, I felt, didn't get the same attention from the writers that Bheem and Cuckoo did. And yet, Neetu Kapoor and Kiara Advani add flesh to these characters. Neetu brings to the role an innate dignity. Her character is inconsistent, but Geeta has such a wise sadness about her. I kept rooting for her to discover a life beyond Bheem. And Kiara gives Naina a steely loveliness, especially in a raging fight scene with Cuckoo. This is not a woman who suffers silently. I also enjoyed Tiska Chopra's saucy math teacher, and Manish Paul, who is hilarious as the bumbling brother-in-law who inadvertently puts his designer shoe in his mouth. And keep an eye out for Prajakta Kohli as Ginny, who again doesn't really get enough depth but brings a sweetness to an underwritten role. Jugjugg Jeeyo has the aesthetic of a blingy Punjabi wedding. This isn't a film that'll make you gasp with the beauty of its compositions or its frames. Though early on, Raj creates an interesting contrast between the dazzling colours of Patiala and the greys of Toronto. The vibrancy is literally leached out of Naina and Cuckoo's partnership, but the candy colours are back as soon as we land in Punjab again. Which is inevitable because Jugjugg Jeeyo doesn't really take any risks. The film is a sanitized and purposefully crowd-pleasing take on what happens between men and women. Jugjugg Jeeyo never transcends to memorable, but there's enough to enjoy here, including some very catchy remix numbers. And I'm grateful to Raj for bringing the gorgeous Nadeem Shravan song Do Dil Mil Rahe Hain from Pardes back into the conversation. All over again, I'm hooked. Now to tell you a bit more about MUBI. Every day, MUBI premieres a new film. From brand new work by emerging filmmakers to modern masterpieces from today's greatest icons, there's always something new to discover. With MUBI, each and every film is hand-selected. It's like your own personal film festival, streaming anytime, anywhere. Try MUBI free for 90 days at mubi.com/filmcompanion90. That's mubi.com/filmcompanion90 for 3 months of great cinema for free. This week, I highly recommend you check out The Worst Person in the World by Joachim Trier, which is streaming now on MUBI. The Worst Person in the World is a gorgeous, tender heartbreaker of a movie. Director Joachim Trier, working with frequent collaborator Eskil Vogt, tells the story of a 30-something Oslo resident, Julie. Julie, played by a terrific Renata Reinsve, is pretty, smart, indecisive, and sometimes even callous. She changes professions, boyfriends, hair color with the same sort of insouciance. Her behavior can be baffling, but the film doesn't judge her. Instead, Jeeyo creates a grounded, irreverent and melancholy study of a woman trying to find her identity. This film will make you laugh. You might also wipe a tear in recognition of your own follies of youth and in recognition of how life eventually forces us all to become wiser. You can watch it exclusively on MUBI. So folks, this was my take on Jugjugg Jeeyo. Have you seen the film and what did you think of it? Did you like it? Did it work for you? What did and what didn't? Tell us in the comments below and keep watching Film Companion.